All right. Well, thank you, Kira. Good morning, everybody. This morning, my talk is entitled The Conscious Activist. And I'm speaking on this because there are times in life when spirit within us compels us to be activists in the world and to speak out for the things we believe in and to give voice to what sometimes doesn't have a voice. And we know that spiritual life must include both faith and works, as Kira said earlier so perfectly. You've heard that scripture, that faith without works is dead, that, love is good, but love in action is better. And that, talk is fine, but walking the talk is making it real. And, on the spiritual journey, on the spiritual path, I know many people that spend a lot of time, they're very dedicated to their spiritual work of personal transcendence and working on their consciousness and working to uproot habits and conditioning, and that is really important, but it is only half the equation in spiritual life. The other half is about putting our love and our concern into action and being of service, not just to the people in our inner circle, but expanding that to our community, but also to our earth and also to our environment. There's on this journey of healing and spiritual awakening, there's a time for learning, and then there's a time for applying what we've learned. And for me, after a lot of years of spiritual practice, with some really great spiritual masters, there came a time when my teacher and also my inner guidance pushed me out into the world and said, okay, go and serve now. You've done enough retreats. Yes, come back once a year, but it's time to go out and serve, and minister and sing and tour and give retreats, right? And use every skill that you've been given by the grace of God to support the greater awakening of consciousness and humanity. So, we all have to find that balanced way of continuing our spiritual growth, and to the best of our ability, also applying that wisdom and energy to make the outer world a better place. Um, I want to take a moment to give thanks for Charlie and Shyla, that are both willing to come onto our board. They're joining our board this month and serve in this volunteer position as a board member. That is a great service. That is selfless service. It's a gift to the church. And so I just really thank you. And I also want to thank Carolyn and Reggie, who have been for years now just really outstanding board members, for such a long time in service to our unity of Oroville. This is a perfect example of putting love into action. This is a demonstration of walking the talk. So, to be a conscious activist, I love this phrase. It's actually from a book I've been reading by James O'Dea, The Conscious Activist. To be that, in whatever way we can serve, there are certain keys that we must master. Um, I mentioned finding balance, where we are of service, but we also work to keep ourselves nourished in mind, body, emotional body, and spirit. We work to keep ourselves in a high vibration so that we don't get lost in anger. We don't get lost in frustration or feeling helpless or feeling hopeless. Because change can come slowly, much more slowly than I would like, that's for sure. But one of the biggest keys, which I'm working on every day right now because I'm really involved in some seva right now, is learning to maintain a certain degree of non-attachment. And I think that is probably one of the hardest things to do. So as some of you know more than others, and I shared a little bit last week, but I've been engaged in some really intense environmental activism here in Mount Shasta. I've been trying to save these big, beautiful, healthy, perfectly fire-resistant old-growth trees that are in our Lake Siskiyou County Park from a very poorly conceived logging operation, a logging plan. Our county, I'll just give you the short story. Our county board of supervisors are charged with taking care of this public land around the lake. But because their budget was short, they sold off a lot of our very big, healthy trees for cutting in the name of fire protection. But yet their plan doesn't include a whole lot of the fuels that are actually dangerous, the smaller trees, the smaller fuels, the bushes, the dead trees. So it's obvious their intention is selling the trees, the big trees, for timber, and it's not about fire safety. So I kind of became the face of this effort without really meaning to or wanting to. But I just spoke the loudest, so I just kind of became that. And we talk about humanity waking up, that we're having this collective awakening. Eckhart Tolle talks about the new earth, and Jeff spoke of it last week. To me, part of humanity waking up, though, is realizing that our earth, our forests, and our trees, and the creatures that share this earth with us are an integral part of the web of life. And they are worthy of our reverence and our respect and our protection. And they are not just a commodity to be used or more often abused. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. But this consciousness, this consciousness of really realizing that everything matters in the web of life is what I feel is missing here locally with our county supervisors, because they're not seeing these trees as living beings, as important to our peace. They overlook our need for nature and natural beauty, and they just see, the trees as a commodity. And those logs, they see them as logs that mean money. So, because I've walked that trail around the lake for 30 years, I know every tree. I know those trees by heart. It's such a true saying, to know something by heart. And so I've become a voice for those living beings. Sometimes we have to speak for the forest and for the trees and for the earth and for the animals. The animals, too, live in those trees. Many birds and nests live in those trees. One of the most powerful lessons that I have ever received in my life was a teaching from Alma, my spiritual teacher, the Hugging Saint, about caring for animals. And I think I told this story maybe a few years ago, but um, it's worth telling again. It happened during one of my stays in India. I was staying at the ashram, Alma's ashram there, and it was late in the afternoon, and we had done all our work, and we went and showered, and we put on our nice clothes to go to the evening chanting and meditation program that was in the temple that Alma led every night. Well, we're all sitting in the temple waiting, and Alma doesn't show up. And so we start to wonder, what happened? Where is she? So myself and a few other friends went looking, and we found Alma in the cowshed. We found her in the cowshed out back, mucking up very icky, sticky cow manure with a big scoop and a bucket. And we realized she was upset that when she walked by the cowshed to come to the, chanting, she saw that the cows, which are very sacred to her, as is everything is very sacred to her, that they were standing in wet manure, like 8 inches deep, and she couldn't bear to see them suffer because they were getting sores on their legs. And so she just started cleaning the stall. It was somebody else's job, Seva, but they hadn't done it. So she went in there in her nice white, clean sari with a bucket and started cleaning. And so, we stood just for a moment wondering what to do. And we realized, well, we have to just jump in. So we jumped in with our buckets and we started cleaning. And there we were, all of us mostly dressed in white, cleaning this very sticky, smelly cow manure. And by the time we were done, I mean, I had cow manure on my face and my hair, on my hands, arms. We all smelled terrible. But as Alma was spraying the hose at the very end, she was doing that final rinse of the stall. She was kind of playfully squirting us. And then she let us out of the stall, and we all went and sat under some palm trees and went into meditation. And I had the deepest, most profound meditation, because I felt liberated by this incredibly powerful teaching that I had just received. about forgetting myself and being of service and getting beyond the aversion that might keep me from helping and just jumping in and doing what was right and doing what was needed and doing what would benefit, in this case, benefit the cows. So I share this story because it taught me something really important about service and about overcoming aversion to help where help is needed, to just do it, right? Um, like I said, I was reading this wonderful book by James O'Dea, the conscious activist. And he was the president of the Institute of Noetic Sciences. That's who published Michael Singer. He also ran the Seva Foundation with Ram Dass. He was the president of Ram Dass's Seva Foundation, which was all about selfless service. And James writes, the emergence of spirituality, the emergence of spiritually engaged conscious activism is one of the critical assignments for our time. You know, we've been mentioning that scripture from James chapter 2 verse 14 through 17, and it really describes aptly what conscious activism is. It reads, "What good is it, my brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith but do not have works? Can faith save you? If a brother or sister is naked and lacks daily food, and one of you says to them, 'Go in peace, keep warm, eat your fill,' and yet you do not supply their bodily needs, what is the good of that? So faith by itself, if it has no works, is dead." What I learned from my spiritual teacher, Amma, was she didn't just want us to do spiritual practice. She wanted us to put that love and wisdom and spiritual energy that we had cultivated, that we had gained. She wanted us to put that into concrete works. And in that one instance, make sure the cows don't suffer, you know, and make sure that those who uh, who are without food have food. You know, making sure a little girl has a chance to learn to sew. You know, by the blessing of Maya last week, Diane, we got Kyra a sewing machine. You know, and we do what we can to make sure that misguided supervisors, government officials, don't cut down our county park to pad their salaries, right? Charles Fillmore, you know, he liked to say that unity is practical Christianity. And to me, the practical piece is demonstrating consciousness, walking our talk. And sometimes taking a stand means we go against the status quo, right? Some rules, some laws, some ideas are just wrong, and we have to question them. Segregation, for instance, that idea was just wrong. And it took a lot of questioning, took a lot of protesting, took a lot of marching across bridges, took a lot of getting into what John Lewis called good trouble to change society's views and to change laws. I actually got into a little good trouble this past week, and that's all I have to say about it. But while I was getting into it, I was thinking of Rosa Parks. I was thinking, you know, if if I was her, I would have probably had to break that rule too. You know, a rule that's telling me I have to sit in the back of the bus. You know, because of an ignorant racist society made a rule that I'm somehow less than. You know, and not allowed to sit up front because of the color of my skin. I am all for nonviolent action, but I am not for being silent and being passive when something is wrong. In that way, silence is complicity. And sometimes breaking rules that are just, you know, sometimes breaking rules that are just wrong, even getting arrested. I haven't so far gotten arrested, but that brings attention to something that needs attention. It serves a purpose. When you read about Rosa Parks, you know, she really had no idea she'd become the mother of the civil rights movement. You know, it was just on that fateful day of December 1st, 1955, there was still a segregation law that said black people had to sit in the back of the bus, in the back section. And she was actually seated in the black section, but in the very front of that section. And the white area was full, and so the bus driver wanted her to move back and let a white person have her seat since it was closest to the white front section, and she refused. And let me read you her words. They're so inspiring. This is from an NPR interview she did in 1992. She said, I did not want to be mistreated. I did not want to be deprived of a seat that I had paid for. It was just time. There was opportunity for me to take a stand, to express the way I felt about being treated in that manner. I had not planned to get arrested. I had plenty to do without having to end up in jail. But when I had to face that decision, I didn't hesitate to do so because I felt that we had endured that too long. And the more we gave in, the more we complied with that kind of treatment, the more oppressive it became. I really relate to that. And I feel like, I feel like the people who hold the consciousness of greed, right, and just using up our natural resources without any regard for the future generations or for the health of the earth, or for the importance of nature in our lives, and for the importance of the healing and well-being that brings us, they would like us to just go along with this consumer attitude, right? And I think that, it empowers them when we feel helpless or powerless or just too tired to take a stand. And I refuse I refuse to accept that and feel I am not helpless, and I know it. But I do see that, with some of the community members here, trying to get everybody going, I can sense that some people, they just don't want to cause waves, right? It's just too hard to have to take a stand and to stand against greed and just to stand against selling off our beautiful trees for lumber. I personally could not take a stand. And I think that's, when you feel that way, that's when it's your dharma, it's your thing to do. So part of what needs to happen is to enlighten the ignorance with greater knowledge. Um, I love to learn, and I've been reading a lot of articles. If you're my Facebook friend, you've been seeing all these articles on trees because they are amazing. They communicate and they're incredibly social. I found a book, The Hidden Life of Trees, and it's by this German man, a German forester by the name of Peter Wolleben. And he writes, trees are far more alert, social, sophisticated, and even intelligent than we thought. And he takes his friend in the book. There's a story where he takes his friend on a walk in the beech forest that he lives near and he oversees. And he points to these two massive birch trees that are growing right next to each other. And he points up at their skeletal winter crowns, which appear really careful to not encroach into each other's space. And he says these two are old friends. They are very considerate in sharing the sunlight, and their root systems are closely connected. In a case like this, when one dies, the other usually dies soon after because they are dependent on each other. Out at the lake, because I know the trees so well, there are many tree couples, and you'll see, I know you've seen them, where there's a cedar and a pine, and they obviously grew together and they just created this interesting work of art in their dance of growing together. And they're both healthy trees, and there's a certain beauty, there's art in the way they grow together. So Wollenben goes on to say, the timber industry, in particular, sees forests as wood-producing systems and battlegrounds for survival of the fittest. But there is now substantial evidence that refutes that idea. And it shows instead that trees of the same species are communal, and they will often form alliances with trees of other species, and that forest trees have evolved to live in cooperative, interdependent relationships maintained by communication and a collective intelligence, similar to an insect colony. I love that. We must change our relationship. I'm speaking of humanity. We must change our relationship with the earth. This is part of a new earth. This is part of humanity waking up. Change our relationship with the forest and the oceans and the lakes and the rivers, and see the living intelligence. See that trees are families. They're a community. So let me share one of my favorite Mary Oliver poems about trees. She says, one of my favorite lines in this poem is, she says, trees save her almost daily. And that is exactly how I feel. That's why I want to save them. She says, when I am among the trees, especially the willows and the honey locust, equally the beech, the oaks, and the pines, they give off such hints of gladness. I would almost say they save me, and daily. I am so distant from the hope of myself, in which I have goodness and discernment and never hurry through the world, but walk slowly and bow often. Around me, the trees stir in their leaves and call out, stay a while. The light flows from their branches and they call again. It's simple, they say. You too have come into this world to do this, to go easy, to be filled with light, and to shine. We have come to shine. And every day I walk in the forest, I feel like I receive that message. Go easy, let go, be filled with light, and shine. So, the last little piece I want to talk about regarding conscious activism is what I find the hardest, as I mentioned earlier, and that is the non attachment, the practicing non attachment. In this past 2 weeks, I have put every spare minute really into calling supervisors and calling people in this community. I called 2 lawyers. I even called the governor. I got his assistant, Cole, and Cole took my formal complaint. That was good. And I got the community to come meet the supervisor at the lake, the one in charge of our district. And, we had 3 powerful opinion pieces in the paper. Dawn has a huge mailing list. She sent out things to everyone in this community. But after all of that, I have to do what Mary Oliver said the trees teach her. I have to let go. I have to let God. I have to release my attachment to all of this effort making a difference. And I think it has made a difference, but it may not save many trees. I don't know. It remains to be seen. I'll let you know. But, we can give our service, our all. But then we have to rest and let go and renew in spirit. And we have to do that over and over and over. So now I walk on the other side of the lake where they're not logging, for my walking meditation. So I'm able to let go. So the final point is to not allow hatred or anger or hopelessness to creep in, like Bob's beautiful daily word reading today. I've said before, we can love the God essence of a person without having to love their thinking or love their beliefs or love their actions or love their ignorance. We can love the essence of who they truly are, but very much dislike the greed and very much make efforts to enlighten that, to change that. So in closing, I invite you to consider what being a conscious activist means to you. In the widest sense, we could say we're all conscious activists if we bring more of God consciousness into the thoughts and the words and the actions of our everyday life. But sometimes like Alma cleaning that cow shed, right? Like Rosa Parks sitting near the front of the bus, we have to be the one to take a stand, to speak out against what's wrong and lend our voice to what needs a voice. So God bless us all with the strength to persevere, to not give up, to not lose heart, and to not be too attached. God bless us with the energy to bring increasing light to this world and to bring change and to bring about this new earth we so wish to see birthed. May our selfless actions flow generously and bless all beings. May it be so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Kathy. Thank you so much.